Geopolitical News, a small article that I had really cut and wanted to share it at the right time, and it's by Jayadeva Ranade. And this is something important for most of our strategic analysts to know. The CCP history revision elevates Xi Jinping to the level of Mao Zedong. Last week, the CCP revised its history again. Since 1999, the party has made these revisions once every decade, airbrushing out leaders who crossed the line, blanking out certain incidents from public memory, and putting its own gloss on major events. This new edition of the party history endorses the policies of Xi Jinping, reinforces other efforts to enhance this image as it prepares to secure a third term at the helm, right? But here, I used to always make a distinction between the CCP and China, which there is. But so problem is you have 92 million strong party as well as members of the PLA. It kind of makes all of China now essentially Xi Jinping, right? Among the important differences between the old and new version, remember this, is the reduced emphasis on Mao era. Now what they're trying to do here, see this. The new version appears to absolve Mao of the Cultural Revolution excess, has shrunk references to it to just one page and makes no mention of party rectification, the anti-rightist struggle, the Great Leap Forward, or the overthrow of the Gang of Four. In fact, it credits Mao with exploring new ways to fight corruption, special privileges and red tape, with the party and the government indicating its hardening stance under Xi. The new version predictably takes a more hawkish and nationalistic approach to major events, thereby endorsing Xi's aggressive foreign policy. Now, this is important for us to know. While, especially group digop guys like this Manoj Keval Ramani, who says, in COVID, India's 19 challenge China's hopes and anxieties. He says, elements of both these elements of concern and opportunity are driving the substantial outreach by Beijing towards New Delhi. Over the past 2 weeks, the first statement of solidarity from the Chinese side came in form of comment by the Foreign Ministry's Wang Wenbin on April 22nd. The following day, Wang colleague Zhao Linjin and that China was ready to provide support, help according to India. Absolutely, they've done nothing, Mr. Keval Ramani. Get your ear to the ground. Or I can easily suggest that you're one of the few that China gets to spend its own view. Its outreach is of no use. It's just useless because none of their material has come in without strings attached, and all of it is twice the price, Mr. Keval Ramani. Get out there or be square. I'm not even sure what you're doing as the China studies head of some Takshila institution. This is what happens. You do Chinese study with the help of Chinese funding, and all of a sudden you're bleating China. What do they say? Then what do they say? Chinese public diplomacy indicates that there is a desire, oh good, to play a greater role in supporting the Indian side to deal with a second wave. Again, a bunch of BS, Mr. Keval Ramani. Come out, let's debate this, Mr. Keval Ramani. Therefore, any supplies that help with augmenting capacity should be welcome, irrespective of where they come from. This is India's strategic. That was useless bullshit, Keval Ramani. Useless bullshit. I'm not sure where you've been, in which bill you're hiding, Mr. Keval Ramani. But hey, key is, once Mao is out of the closet, one thing is for sure. Mao's main thing, folks, remember, palm and 5 fingers. Palm is Tibet, 5 fingers, again let me repeat, Nepal, Ladakh, Arunachal Pradesh, Bhutan, and Sikkim. As long as she's in power, folks, he ain't forgetting that. So, and neither should we. But the whole game starts, folks, in Tibet. So folks, lots of action happening in Tibet. But here's one thing that Claude RP wrote and that we should take note of. The so-called liberation of Tibet this day, 1951. He says on May 23rd, 1951, a 17-point agreement was signed between Lhasa and Beijing. Though the Tibetans claimed that it was forced upon them under duress, the date marked the end of Tibet as an independent nation. Okay. In October 49, the tide turned for the Tibetans. The communists came to power in China. A tale of well-planned and well-executed moves unfolded. First, the invasion of Eastern Tibet in October 50. A vague protest by the Indian government led to the adjournment of the Tibetan appeal in UN. And that's the end of as he says, May 1951. It was followed by the Panchsheel Accord, neutralizing India under the Hindi-Chini Bye-bye bluff. In April 654, it ended with the crushing of the Tibetan uprising in March 59, and finally in October 62 by China teaching lessons to India. Right? It says a first consequence of the agreement was that the land of Stone lost its independence to become a province of China. In the process, India lost a peaceful border. The Chinese propaganda still says the people of all ethnic groups in Tibetan and big family of the motherland work together to create a beautiful new life, and their sense of happiness is constantly enhanced. So obviously you can lay it on the footsteps of Nehru and the British. I think British also had a role to play, right? Then China, but the opportunity now for India is to start supporting. We are the biggest asset is the Dalai Lama sitting here, right? However, because of India's policy, a lot of Tibetans refugees are now fleeing India to go to the United States, right? However, a combination, because now things are changing in the United States. So as it says, that the US State Department is now focusing and wants to ensure that the Dalai Lama is not in any form or fashion elected by China. And India must throw its weight behind that. So China asserts it will pick their heir to Dalai Lama. China on Friday said that it will choose a successor to the India-based Dalai Lama through the process of drawing lots from the golden urn, with the candidate subject to approval of the Chinese government. A policy paper released on Friday all but ruled out the scope for the 14th and current Dalai Lama to himself choose a successor. And India must actually throw in its weight with the rest of the world, right? No role for China in choosing next Dalai Lama, says Pempat Sering. It says China's government can have no role in choosing the next Dalai Lama, especially since its communist leaders don't even believe in religion, whereas succession of the Tibetan spiritual leader is a deeply religious matter. The next president of the Tibetan government in exile said on Saturday, and is supported by the United States. Right? What do you have here? China's white paper on Tibet. Dalai Lama's successor has to be approved by Beijing. Right. Here is what is critical for India, folks. It really, if palm is the things that moves the five fingers, the first part India must really focus on how to counter the palm, right? And you really have the asset in India, and it's about time we got off this one China policy, which I think has happened. Now the US has done the same thing. India did it under Vajpayee, but we got to accelerate that a little bit more. And why it's important is, and this is why I said that Ladakh is critical, that they are hankering for Ladakh. Kashmir is just a red herring for them. They actually want Ladakh for the water, for the fact that it was part of Tibet, as historically shown earlier. So he says by making, when Stoke done right, by making Ladakh a union territory, the NDA government has finally restored its dignity. He said it's not only restored its dignity, what it has really done has improved our national security position vis-a-vis China. He says, Ladakh remained critical for India's national security. Imagine without Ladakh, China's People Liberation Army would be sitting at the southern foothills of the Himalayas. Imagine that, right? And he says, the Chinese forays into Gilgit-Baltistan, albeit under China's CPEC pretext, may not be without its historical claim over the region, says, since the Tang time. Okay, Ladakh's unique geographical location should offer India huge counter-offensive potential in terms of leveraging the country's connectivity, the Eurasian region and China. This is important, folks. But to make that connectivity happen, Gilgit and Baltistan must fall into India's play, right? And Alok Bansal had written earlier, had said, the next step, Kashmir and Ladakh. The government should create new capitals in both UTs. Construction and tourism will be big sectors for now. This is important. You really need to enhance the economic and physical infrastructure of Ladakh, India. But more important than having a new capital, no more important than anything else, remember, Ladakh is the solar capital of the world. You can really ensure that it becomes the chip fab center of the world too, because it has what it necessarily takes, like as I've always said, clean air, plenty of water, lots of land, and energy that can all be non-polluting, and that's very critical, folks. And India continues to say, ready to thwart any PLA activity on LAC Nirvane, because, while that Keval Ramani was going on outreach, there really is no outreach, Mr. Keval Ramani. Just forget about the outreach as long as there is Mukha-mukhi going on our border. Just forget about it. Everybody in India should just forget about that. Cyber attacks on critical infrastructure. Is India prepared? India too has not escaped the impact of such debilitating cyber attacks. The NotPetya attack had infected the computer network of Maersk, the world's largest shipping company. The infection led to a further disruption of terminal operations, most prominently of APM terminals, Mumbai at the Jawaharlal Nehru Port Trust, India's biggest container port. The disruption further delayed cargo deliveries and interrupted global supply chains. Most recently in 2020, a China-linked hacker group, Red Echo, targeted India's power sector, ports and parts of the railway infrastructure, affecting Mumbai. So forget Keval Ramani, folks. He's a bunch of poppycock. Anybody who comes out like this, outreach by China, all bunch of poppycock. Okay, folks. Next, the person to remember is where we really need to focus on is Nepal. Let's talk about it a little later. So next, folks, quickly, Nepal. Nepal is in a crisis right now. It says Nepal COVID crisis, 40% tests returning positive, medical system stretch. India will now, luckily for India, we are getting control of the second wave. It's time to step out and help Nepal for sure. And what Sham Saran writes is very critical for us to know. A fine balance in Nepal. Political uncertainty in the neighboring country does not benefit India. Delhi must remain engaged without being intervention, especially since it's one of the fingers as far as Mao is concerned, right? He says, at the present juncture, political and public opinion in Kathmandu, if not in the whole of Nepal, is convinced that Oli is now India's favorite, that he has promised the BJP government in Delhi that he will promote the return of Nepal to its Hindu Rashtra status under the monarchy and keep the Chinese at bay. Some rumors even claim that India is working to bring back the monarchy to Nepal. The statements of certain RSS and VHP leaders supporting the return of monarchy are cited as incontrovertible proof. The recent visit of the former King Gayanendra and his wife to the Kumbh festival in Haridwar gave impetus to such speculation. The Indian government has obviously his ear to the ground. He said, however, one thing that he should note, and he's learned while his term as Foreign Secretary and as Ambassador to Pakistan, one, the monarchy in Nepal, at least since King Mahendra accession in 1955, has always tried to distance Nepal from India and promoted a nationalism which takes hostility to India as its main driver. He says, India should remain fully engaged with Nepal at all levels and across political spectrum. The safeguarding of India's vital interests demands such sustained engagement. A hands-off policy will only create space for other external influences such of which, like China, may prove to be hostile. However, engagement must dispense with the recurrent tendency to label Nepali political leaders of friends and enemies, and it's time that this rosy-tinted glasses of RSS and VHP and everybody else who wants a Hindu Rashtra should be trashed. Is it? There, three, in India's engagement with Nepal, the Terai Belt and its large Mahadesi population plays a critical and indispensable role. In an effort to win over the Kathmandu political and social elite, one should be careful not to mimic the elite's disdain for its fellow citizens living in the plains. Our engagement with Nepal must find an important place for Nepali citizens who are our immediate neighbors and act as a kinship, cultural and religious bridge between our two countries. If there is contrived hostility towards India in the Kathmandu elite, there is a widespread feeling of neglect among the Mahadesi population. This extends to Nepal's other ethnic groups as well. This is the important part. We can't keep throwing the Mahadesis under the bus. Finally, India needs to appreciate that people-to-people links between our two countries have an unmatched density as no other country, including China, enjoys this asset. The challenge to our Nepal policy lies in leveraging this precious asset to ensure a stable and mutually productive state-to-state relationship. It has been my experience that people-to-people relationship, however, including the long-standing religious and cultural links, cannot be, folks, a substitute for sensible state-to-state relations. But they can be a powerful instrument if properly used to enhance the latter. And here, folks, is where we've lost the plot. Always lost the plot because of this rosy-tinted Hindu Rashtra, right? But here, I'm glad India joins global push for COVID origin pro. China feels COVID heat as study backs lab theory. Okay, but China is fingering here and there. What do we have? The small item. China blames UK for Kashmir crisis. That's a new one, folks. Then, US residents sought by China for comments freed in Dubai. Dubai is falling out of this China. So China just doesn't get everything, right? Obviously, US-China agreed to cooperate on climate crisis, but that's a whole bunch of poppycock, again for John Kerry to realize. But luckily, the United States policy has not been swayed by that kind of outreach on climate, which the China thought they might be able to trade for a better relationship. Luckily, it happened, and it probably won't happen. Jai Hind.